It's 216 BCE, and the mighty Roman Empire, the unstoppable juggernaut of the ancient world, is about to face its biggest nightmare. The most brilliant general in history, Hannibal Barca, has just led his army across the Alps, yes, with elephants, and is now standing on the cusp of destroying Rome. The Romans think they've got this in the bag. They're confident. They have an army twice the size of Hannibal's, but this battle? It's not just a fight for victory. It's a fight for survival. The stage is set for one of the most devastating defeats Rome would ever experience. And it all comes down to one place, the Battle of Cannae. Let's break this down. In 216 BCE, Rome, sitting at the height of its power, is locked in the Second Punic War with Carthage. The Romans had already suffered embarrassing losses to Hannibal, but after crossing the Alps and winning a series of victories, Hannibal knew he could do one better. His goal was clear: crush the Roman legions once and for all, but this wasn't going to be just any battle. At Cannae, Hannibal had about 50,000 to 60,000 men. The Romans? They were fielding an army of 80,000 to 90,000, and they were itching for revenge. But Hannibal? He had a plan. A genius plan. One that would forever change the face of warfare. Hannibal didn't charge in with brute force. No, he lured the Romans in. The key to Hannibal's brilliance was how he used his army's formation. Picture this. Hannibal set his troops up in a bowl-shaped formation, where the middle of his line was weaker. This gave the Romans exactly what they wanted, an opportunity to charge straight ahead, thinking they had a clear path to victory. The Romans, led by their overconfident commanders, took the bait and surged right for that vulnerable middle. But what they didn't realize? They were walking straight into a trap. As the Romans pushed forward, the Carthaginian center folded, just like Hannibal had planned. The Romans thought they were breaking through, but that was exactly what Hannibal wanted. The moment they got too deep, the surrounding Carthaginian wings, packed with elite cavalry, slammed into the Roman flanks and then began encircling them. Imagine the chaos. The Romans, caught in a deadly pincer, had nowhere to run. The flanks closed in, and the Roman army was surrounded on all sides. What was once a massive force turned into a trapped, panicked mob. And now, Hannibal's genius was fully realized. The Romans were caught in the middle of a brutal vice with no escape. Soldiers, many of them veterans, fighting for their lives as they were pushed further into the trap. But the worst part, the Romans had no idea how bad it was getting. They were in full-on attack mode, and they couldn't see the slow, deadly tightening of the noose. So what happens next? The Carthaginian cavalry crushed the Roman cavalry, pushing them back in a matter of minutes. With their flanks exposed, the Romans were completely surrounded. The Carthaginian forces, fighting on all sides, pressed in from every direction. It was carnage. By the time the battle was over, around 50,000 to 70,000 Roman soldiers had been killed or captured. Hannibal had won the battle, but the impact of this loss was staggering. Rome, the mightiest empire of the ancient world, had been crushed. For a moment, it looked like the Roman Empire might fall. But here's where the story takes a twist. Why didn't Hannibal march straight to Rome? After such a devastating victory, you might think Hannibal would storm straight to the city and bring down the Roman Empire for good. But despite his overwhelming success, he didn't. Why? Resources. Hannibal's army, while brilliant, was severely weakened from the battle. His men were tired and his supply lines were stretched thin. Without reinforcements from Carthage, he simply didn't have the strength to lay siege to Rome itself. So instead, Hannibal waited. Rome, however, didn't back down. The Romans could have thrown in the towel after this catastrophic defeat, but they didn't. In fact, they did something extraordinary. They adapted. Instead of launching a counteroffensive, the Romans decided to avoid direct confrontations with Hannibal's forces and used a strategy of attrition, whittling down Hannibal's resources and cutting off his supply lines. Rome also turned its focus to training its soldiers differently, adapting their tactics to outsmart Hannibal in future battles. Instead of relying solely on large formations, they embraced smaller, more flexible units, perfect for avoiding Hannibal's brilliant encirclements. and that resilience paid off. Despite Hannibal's brilliance, the Romans slowly wore him down. Rome didn't fall after Cannae. In fact, the empire would recover and eventually crush Carthage, securing its place as one of the most powerful civilizations in history. But let's not forget, the Battle of Cannae remains one of the most impressive military victories ever, not just for Hannibal, but for how it tested the very limits of Roman resilience. Hannibal's genius didn't just nearly destroy Rome, it forced Rome to reinvent itself, and in the end, that's what made Rome invincible.